Welcome to the Always On podcast. I'm your host, Duncan MacPherson. On this podcast, our objective is to enable our audience, which are very high caliber fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves. On today's podcast, I had a very good conversation with Scott Danner. Scott is an executive vice president and head of legacy at Steward Partners, and he's the host of the High Performance Life podcast. And at the end of our conversation today, we get into the acronym of LIFE and what that means to Scott. But we also talked about scaling up, enterprise value and exit strategy, transitioning firms, and some technology innovations as well. So hopefully you like this. And if you do, please like and share, tell your colleagues. And if you have any ideas for topics or potential guests that you'd like to have and hear from on this podcast, just let us know. Thanks for listening. Okay, very excited. Our next guest on the Always On podcast is somebody I've known for several years. We've kept tabs and followed each other probably actually for decades now. I actually went on to AI and I said, who is this Scott Danner guy with Steward Partners? And this is what AI gave me. Scott Danner serves as the executive vice president and head of legacy at Steward Partners. And the legacy division focuses on mergers, acquisitions, succession planning, continuity strategies, and the like for financial advisory practices. So who better to have on this podcast to have this conversation? Scott, great to see you, man. How are you?
I'm great. I always love a good conversation with you. And it's been a fun couple decades following careers and reading your stuff and learning from you. So I'm always grateful to be a part of anything you're doing.
Yeah, there's a handful that I've grown up with over the course of the last 20 to 30 years. And it's really nice to see the progression and the evolution. And the one thing it's like the constant is the philosophy or the mindset or the outlook of the individuals I have a great connection with does not change. The individuals evolve and their mindset expands, but how they're wired and their decorum, their code of conduct remains the same. So I admire that. I'll overlook the helmet behind you. That's a tough one. But
The Dallas Cowboys helmet behind me.
oh, is that what that is? Okay.
Yeah, that's a Cowboys helmet. Don't worry. It's nothing too bad. I've been enduring the pain long enough. I had a great run in my early years, and my dad and I are longtime fans. So now my son, who's 19, is like, Dad, they got to give me something. It's been 19 years. I need a playoff win. I need something. So
Okay, so full disclosure, I knew what it was. I just didn't want to fully acknowledge it. But and again, Canadian talking about sports, it's a little too soon on a multitude of levels. But let's move on. So here's what I want to talk about today. This is your wheelhouse. This is what you do every single day. And a little bit more on the backstory. Scott has gravitated into this part of the space. You've worn many hats, including being an advisor back in the day. So I don't think anybody's got a better sort of finger on the pulse in terms of how the enlightened advisor is wired. But Scott, here's what I want to get into, and we can break this down. I want to talk about scaling up. I want to talk about enterprise value and exit strategies. I want to talk about transitioning firms, moving from one environment to another. And I want to talk about AI and other innovations that have been pretty seismic in the financial services space. So let's start there. Let's talk about scaling up. So for those who keep in touch with Pareto systems, a big part of our approach is what I refer to as the multiplier method. And basically somebody who's been methodically working on their business, building out their organic B2C approach, business to client approach, has earned the right. They get to a point where they're now franchise ready and they can pivot from B2C to B2B and they can start to scale up. They can attract other advisors to adopt and draft in behind the process. They can buy a partial book of business. They can buy an entire business. And that proof of concept builds on itself, or they can do it several times. So share with us some of your insights and observations around that theme as a starting point.
Well, it's really interesting to start there because I love the fact that scaling was something I always wanted to do. So early on in my career, I was almost too far out in front. Like I wanted to do things that I wasn't ready to do yet because I needed a team. I wanted to always focus on my unique ability. What am I great at? And not what I'm not great at. And so I found myself slowly building that team. And as we built the team, and we'll talk about transitioning firms and building something, because when I started Freedom Street Partners, the first thing I decided we were going to do in 2016 was we were going to build this firm in and around what I did great and then what any of our partners did great. And that would be the lane we would ride in. And we would build and develop strategies, processes, and everything was process driven to the point when we bought our first business, to your point, we bought our first business in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a 79-year-old, very well-established individual. His son was in technology and was highly successful and had created this spreadsheet, this data spreadsheet with all the things that his dad should be reviewing from the 32 companies that bid on his business. Now, I didn't have a business in Charlotte. I didn't have a I barely knew the market, but my business was dialed in. So when he did this chart, we were the ones that came out, Freedom Street came out head and shoulders above everybody else because we had defined processes. We were younger, not that our younger age was the only variable that was important, but so many of the people that were bidding on the business were between 5 and 7 years younger than him. That's not giving his clients a long runway. They had no succession plan. They had no strategy. We had multi-generational leadership. We had a process between our client relationship management systems. So how do we deliver that? We had a proven system that we could show him, that we could communicate. These are we had investment management models. We could show him exactly what we were doing and where his clients were going to be. So to your point, we built those systems so that when we bought the business, not only were we able to win the business and buy it against 30 plus other companies who may or may not have been more established and longer in the business than us, but they weren't buttoned up and we were. And that was a game changer. When people joined us, they knew exactly what we were going to provide them, exactly what we were going to give their client experience, and how we were going to make them successful on their exit. That was a major, major benefit, but it was also a benefit to how we ran our business.
Okay, you covered a lot of ground there. The first thing that came to mind, and I've never really thought about this in terms of the vetting process and the buyer seller dynamic, but there are a lot of advisors who have attempted to scale up, and that scale came at the expense of their organic business. They took their finger off the pulse around the client experience, making the clients the voice. They got so fixated on the bigger prize that things unraveled on that side. So what I was hearing in what you were talking about is they probably understood that you covered both sides, the client-centered approach and the ability, because of process and efficiency, to adequately scale up. Is that safe to say?
100%. We saw our organic growth shoot through the roof
I love it.
when we were inorganically growing because we had to be buttoned up inside.
Right.
The deliverables had to be there. And so we focused so hard on making sure that that was buttoned up. And we practiced the 80-20 rule consistently. We were building bench strength by constantly having our bottom 20% of our book of business be serviced by our youngest advisors as a team approach. But they could set into our system. So now we have hungry advisors, young, interested, curious team members learning with the guidance of the older generation, and they're continuously helping to drive new business, new growth. So couple that with proving to the new business that's coming in that we're buying that we have everything buttoned up. These were things that were actually extremely beneficial. So you nailed it. That's a great point.
Well, and the beauty of, as you scale up and adding the bench strength, adding proteges, multi-generational aspects is not leaving them to their own devices just to be talented around technical ability, but just following a panoramic and all-encompassing process, which liberates them to actually go deeper into the bedside manner and some of those qualitative issues. There's an interesting correlation in scaling up and being franchise ready is that has a profound impact on your enterprise value, your continuity and succession plan, and your overall exit strategy if you're somebody who's 5 to 10 years out. So let's segue into that then. Let's talk about the end game. That's what we call it over here, the end game advisor. Every business is built to be sold. Redundancy, continuity, and succession, like build it out in advance of needing it. At a minimum, it makes you more impactful, more relevant, more indispensable to your clients who have their own continuity and succession issues. But this is what it means to fully shift from a book of business to an actual business, is addressing these issues. So let's get into those weeds.
Are you a god or are you a prophet? So this is how I identify a business. If I'm talking to someone, I had a conversation the other day and the guy was telling me that he's getting, enormous returns and he's 77 years old and, he's got it all figured out and he does it all himself. Well, that lessens his valuation. That makes me less interested to purchase the practice, makes it more difficult to replicate. If he's even achieving what he's stating, which I believe he is, then it's even harder to bring someone in to learn those strategies because he hasn't done it in all these years. Are you a god or are you a prophet means very simply, if everything in the business runs through you, you're killing your business.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be the business. That's a hobby. That's not a business. If you want to build a business, it's got to include other working parts. And so the profit just means that I can replicate these systems and processes. And look, you have some special sauce. You've got the unique ability. I'm not saying that there won't be unique things that only you can do. I think that's amazing. If you just focused on that, that's great. But there are things that we do to help amplify businesses. And so if I'm going to go into a business that we purchase, I'm going to first evaluate what their next gen platform is. Like how are we planning for succession? How are we building bench strength? And are these systems repeatable, scalable, and process driven? And if they are, Duncan, then we can easily go in. They're going to get a higher valuation. They're going to see more value out of the whole business. We're going to help them implement a plan. Guess what? There's a high value to the client because continuity has been on that person's mind from the beginning versus waiting until the end and being like, oh, hey, here's Duncan. He's going to take over your accounts. That never goes over very well. So, these are things that I think, to your question, it's a great setup. And I love the saying, and you taught me the last time we talked that the first time I use something, I give the person credit. The second time, I just say somebody told me, and the third time, it's my idea. So this is now my idea based on that logic, but it's not. I got it from someone else, but it's very good.
If you're like most advisors, you're constantly balancing two priorities: growth and consistency. That's why we built the Turnkey Advisor membership, a community of like-minded advisors who understand the importance of working on the business, not just in it. Membership includes proven strategies for growing, teaming, scaling, or exiting with full resources and support, including access to Pareto Academy, things once only available to our private coaching clients. If you're serious about bringing structure and scalability to your business, this is where consistent results are achieved. For a limited time, get 50% off with our holiday special. Learn more at paretosystems.com/turnkey.
All right, Scott, full disclosure, it's a two-way street because on more than one occasion, I've taken a lot of your stuff. And in fact, a while back, I was talking to one of my kids who's actually been involved in the business and contributed in a few different ways. And we were talking and he said, so isn't the business really dependent on you? And I said to him, no, I'm trying to actually depersonalize so it's not the Duncan show. And in fact, I can tell you that I'm no longer a god. I'm now a prophet.
You've graduated.
And I held it and I could see in his eyes, he's going, that's pretty good. But I didn't give you credit. I didn't fall into the 1, 2, 3, like Scott told me. I just owned it as if it was mine.
That's fine with your own kids. They have no they can't identify that at all. So you're free to use whatever you want with your children. It can become yours.
He does follow me on LinkedIn though, so he might crack.
You might find out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so but it is true. I mean, those who micromanage their businesses will never build a major enterprise. It's just they're undermining on so many levels. And I think we had a conversation a while back where we were talking about the unintended consequences of trying to have this complex of, okay, this is my business from the standpoint of long-term empowerment and engagement, whereas somebody is heading towards the end of their career, clients stop empowering and stop introducing people because they're not sure about what this looks like down the road. And we've had many teams that have gone through our endgame advisor format, and it's incredible what it activates when clients are reframed and reintroduced, not just to the people, but to the practice and the process, which means it almost doesn't matter what person they're dealing with. It's all under the same practice and the same process. Now they're bought into that completely. They're not just trusting an individual. They're bought into the panoramic value that's being delivered. So this is next level stuff.
It's so powerful. One of the things that I'll just quickly add is that I was always shocked. Several years ago, we started doing video with clients, and I've always done a lot of video, but we started really doing outreach to clients. And one of my partners, my friend Tim Riddle at Discover Blind Spots, he said, I always want you to start with Meet the Team. You'll be surprised at how important it is to just reintroduce your team to your clients that have always known them, but they don't always remember what each person on the team does. And I got so many interesting emails years and years ago when I did that, where clients are like, oh, I completely forgot that Valerie does this on your team. Or, wow, there's such a great breadth of bandwidth of your team that I had forgotten how deep your bench is. And these were things that people were, oh, now I know that if anything happens to you, I know you're good. It was so many emails from people that know, like, and trust me already that it made such a big difference. So to your point, reintroducing even the simplistic things, not just the in-depth processes, just who you work with could be empowering to your message and your organic growth strategy.
Well, one of the most powerful forces in relationship management is the law of familiarity. Things, as a relationship endures over the years, things get overlooked, things get forgotten, value gets trivialized, loyalty fatigue develops, things just become familiar. And now the relationship's at risk. So going back and rejuvenating a relationship with things like that, I do want to touch on video and innovations in a second, because it is powerful. But okay, so we touched on scaling up and the multiplier method. We've talked about the end game advisor, enterprise value, exit strategies. And I'm sure you've got some amazing resources that you'd make available to anybody listening in that wants to maybe just sort of reimagine what blind spots they might have or gaps. You've got some tools.
We have a readiness quiz that we like people to utilize. And the readiness quiz just kind of says, how ready are you for succession or your next chapter? And I think that usually is a good starting point because it just gives you a chance to identify where you stand. But I think a lot of people think they're ready and on paper they have a succession plan, but it might be with someone that they would never actually refer their own business to or their own family to. And so these are things we hear from advisors all the time. And it's not that there aren't great choices out there. It's that maybe there aren't great choices inside of your current network or your system. And so you either have to go bring it in. I just had a conversation today with a young man who was on my podcast, and he just started in our industry. He was a Green Beret, highly successful, just wrote a brand new book on mental health and the stigma of mental health in the military. Super interesting, dynamic human. But I met him keynoting an event, and he came up to me afterwards and said, I'd love to be on your podcast to talk about this, but I'm also starting a financial advisory practice. I just got off the ground. My advice to him was start to network with everybody and anybody you can in your market that's in this industry, because there are 8 people retiring and only 3 coming in. And there aren't enough choices right now for the next generation. So be one of those choices and shorten the gap of what you need, but you could take control on both ends of that spectrum, the youthful side or the older side. It goes for the succession option that you're searching for if you've been in the business 30, 40 years. Go out and start to identify who are the up and comers, who might be the people that you would want to have in your practice. These are the things that I think we kind of sit back and just say, I don't know what to do. Or we pick someone that maybe we don't want. So I love the ability to kind of control our own destiny.
Yeah, totally. And just help me out with that stat again. You said there's 8 people departing for every 1 coming in?
For every 3. So there are 3 coming in, there are 8 leaving. So the statistics, and I believe this one has either come from DeVoe or Cirilli data. So both of them are backed pretty well. But what we see is the statistic we also often talk about is 41% of the entire industry will be turned over in the next 10 to 12 years. So that means that the majority of the people you know that are doing this every single day will not be in the space in the next decade. How are we going to be handling that transformative moment, that metamorphosis in this industry? And I think, there's a lot of reasons for that. The average age of an advisor, a producer, a top level successful advisor is over 60 still today. So, it's obvious that between 60 and 70, that's probably the turnover timeline, right? So how do we continue to build that bench strength and develop that next chapter? So yeah, that's a big statistic.
Trying to get my head around how that squares with the fact that there's more buyers than sellers. And so there's this consolidation that's happening, but I got to think that there are some advisors out there that would rather have a mentor protege dynamic for the last 5 years for many benefits. I think the opportunity for younger advisors to really seize this, and something I say all the time is, if you really want to get into a groove, be sure you're placing as much importance on practice management and relationship management as you are on wealth management and your technical ability. Because those two, the practice management, relationship management, there's bigger gaps. It's more proprietary. There's more unmet needs there. And it's very difficult to commoditize that. The technical, the core competency, there's ways you can address that just to sort of balance it out. So it's interesting. These next 10 years or so are going to be fascinating. Okay. So let's talk about transitioning from one environment to another, because that seems to be accelerating. I'm having more and more conversations with advisors who They're saying to me, my current firm keeps moving the goalposts, or just the philosophy seems to evolve, or the leadership's transitioned and it's different, or our firm got acquired and maybe this is the time to make a move. Um, I spend a lot of time saying to advisors, okay, let's prime the pump. In a perfect world, don't do anything abruptly. Be prepared, prime it, stage it, like let's do it properly. So I'll get into some of that, but I'd love your initial comments on things advisors have to keep in mind before they make what is hopefully going to be their last move.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When I was coming into the business, it was a time where people would switch every couple of years, and the wirehouses just traded advisors. So you went from Merrill to Morgan, Morgan to Smith Barney, then Morgan bought Smith Barney, and then like it was this incestuous relationship, right? And so there was some value in being loyal and staying somewhere and building that business. And then we've also seen a migration of over 1 to 2% of the industry moving from the wirehouses to the RIA space every single year. So that continues to get more popular. All of this is important when you talk about transitions, because the other thing that I think most people think about, I know I did, I transitioned in 2016, and technology and DocuSign was at the beginning of its timeline. I did everything by paper. I still have PTSD over that move. When I think about it today, it's not like that. Today, I can have a conversation with Raymond James, with Schwab, with Fidelity, with Pershing, with so many companies, and we can move 4,000 households in a very short amount of time. And so the technology has changed what it's like to transition. The only thing that hasn't changed is the fear that you feel when you're considering it. You fear that your clients may choose the firm over you. But I would say 90% of the time, you're wrong. The clients, if you've established, again, if you've established systems and processes, if you have served them, if they've done all the things, Duncan, you've been teaching for decades, the clients are with them. And that's really, really valuable and important. Now you have to know your contracts, and you have to know, truth. One thing that is really important is to make sure that you're doing exactly what you said. You're pausing, you're evaluating all options. But I think the technology and the ability to be on multi-custodial platforms, I mean, these are very interesting things that give your clients some opportunity to evaluate maybe the best option for them. And as long as we keep them at the forefront, you're always going to be doing the right thing. I always looked at it this way. Last point I'll make is, when I left, I remember telling people, listen, it's my job to identify that if I think something's better out there, I need to lead you. You've hired me to be a leader of your financial world, of your life in that capacity. And if I find out something's better and I sit on it and I just stay because I always knew that to be what I knew, that's not good enough. It's my job to know what's best for you and to lead us. And that's, people admire that. They appreciate that. And that integrity goes a long way for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be client centered, and we have a little framework and a philosophy. We call it PSP. Any move there has to be a philosophical alignment. Strategic is, how does the client benefit from this? And then practical, it cascades down to the economics. You don't lead with the economics. You finish with the money, but you focus on philosophical fit, strategic alignment of interests, and then have it just sort of crescendo at those practical monetary elements. The thing I wanted to talk to you about, and this is where it starts to affect all three of the themes that we've been on, is I ask advisors uh, before they make a move, before they start to scale, before they start to think about their exit and their end game, stage the business, stage it. No different than before you sell a home, like declutter, tidy it up, have a home inspection done before you even list it to find out where the little issues are that are lurking, so you can be so confident and crystal clear and transparent when you start to actually engage. And then priming, going even further, like I was working with a team that was switching firms. It's a long story, and boy, he looks back on that and said, am I ever glad we got this right? When he decided that he was going and decided where he was going to go, the first thing he did was he's told his clients, I want to let you know that we are going through an exercise right now for the purposes of elevating the client experience. We've engaged a consultant. We want to level up. And our coach has told us that if we want to improve the client experience, ask people on the receiving end. So I want to make you the voice I listen to. So can I just ask you 3 quick questions? He was planting the seed, priming the pump for the fact that he was going to take a business to the next level. He asked our 3 questions, which you can get from, the books, and all of that's available. But once that campaign was done, he knew where he stood. He knew how he was perceived and described. He then used that as a launch pad to go back to all of his clients and say, hey, as we went through this exercise, we came to this realization that where we have been for the last 12 years has served us incredibly well, but our clients' needs are evolving quickly. They're becoming much more complex. We're trying to get out in front of these evolving needs as best we can. And after an incredibly exhaustive due diligence exercise, we've actually made the decision to move to this new environment. And I can't wait to show you specifically why we've made this decision. So it was an incremental sort of ascending approach. It wasn't abrupt. And the transition was so incredibly powerful. And Scott, I'd love any insights that you have around getting it right so that you're not worried about what is going to fall off, but you're excited about what is going to build because of your transition.
I think you nailed it when you said about getting the house in order, staging it. I love that because in doing so, you're going to figure out what you're missing. You're going to figure out that it could look a little better. It could feel a little better. And where does it need that? The second thing that you have to evaluate is your team. Do you have A, B players, or do you have C, D players? It's not the time to bring C, D players with you. It's the time that A, B are leveled up to more A players. And if you need to bring on somebody else, hire before that need. That's something else that I would encourage people to do if there's an opportunity. And I love the example you gave where somebody is setting the course and kind of asking the clients what they could be doing differently, and they're letting them know that they're searching for the right opportunity. And then when they make that decision, the clients are with them. They brought them along with them. When I did this many years ago, I was both pleasantly surprised and also, I went through it and I had some rough patches. So when I did my move, my transition specialist that was helping me ended up going into rehab, and he was an alcoholic, I guess. And the first 3 to 7 days that he was with me, he lost all of my paperwork. I mean, it was a awful, awful experience. And but what's interesting is it forced me to get into the weeds on every single thing. And then we took that and created a process around it. And it was a non-protocol move. So when I built the process, I ended up leveraging that process across, 50 to 100 different moves across the country where I was either helping someone else do it, leading them into our firm. It became one of the greatest strategies that we had in scaling up and building. And I learned from that challenge. So the ability to pivot and then build my team around those challenges. We also had multiple firms, like within a year, Duncan went to non-protocol after being protocol their whole lives. And I had this non-protocol transition strategy that was really, really valuable. And so fast forward, this is a great setup as well and lead into a even deeper conversation. But the number one thing we're seeing today, even when people are selling their companies, is they're not looking to sell and exit as much as they're looking to sell and grow. They're
Mhm.
looking to strategically partner. So all the things we just talked about, if you're going to be the best partner for somebody else and you want to leverage what somebody else has, you got to button up your own house first. No different than any other relationship. You want to get married? You got to love yourself, know what you do great, find a partner that complements you, and then you partner. But that's a great way to do it. And so strategic partnership is the word we're seeing at Steward. That's probably something I'm doing the most of, is these strategic partnerships where RIAs are leveraging all the infrastructure that we have. And it's becoming something that makes the transition seamless as a transition can be. I'm using air quotes for those of you listening, because transitions are always bumpy, but I've seen some really great successes, and focusing on the transitions and the culture fit. You mentioned culture fit before. That is the number one most important thing. Whether you're selling, whether you're transitioning, you've got to have a culture fit and you got to get that part right. So, these are the reasons why you get the house in order ahead of time.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And I'm sure you've seen it all too. I mean, we've had examples where teams have had to exit or transition in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Not ideal. From our perspective, 6, 9, 12 months is the ideal ramp up and timeline for execution. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the if you're ready and that's great. One of the challenges I see is that advisors tend to get analytically in the weeds and paralyzed by overanalysis. So the only challenge that I see if they start planning too far in advance is they start questioning all their own decisions.
Mm.
At a certain point in time, it's got to come down to execution. So if you're
Right.
going to do it and you know where you're going to go, that's great. And you just build towards it. There's a lot of things you can do to button up your client relationships. You can make sure they have all the things that they need to help the relationship thrive. You can be looking at ways to develop and build. So, I mean, I don't think it's ever a bad thing to have more time. Don't get me wrong. I just want advisors to be careful not to get paralyzed. We tend to be a group that will get into the weeds and really, really overanalyze, and that becomes a challenge. So the key is the culture fit, the transition team, the strategy, and then most importantly, legal and ethical. So what I was always most proud of is that process that we built. We never were challenged. There was never an ethical or legal battle that we were fighting through all of that, because we did it the right way. Never poke the bear, always be polite, always celebrate where you came from, always build up where you were, and then develop why you chose where you're at now. I have never once resented or been disappointed in the path I took to get to where I am today. So, that I think that's a mistake a lot of people make too, is they make the scapegoat, well, this company or this place doesn't have all these things, but that doesn't matter. They had all those things when you needed it, and now it's time to figure out what the next path is.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm sure your readiness quiz is just a nice, thoughtful progression for somebody to make sure it's like a checklist, a flight plan, like just make sure that nothing falls through the cracks and there's no opportunity leakage. So everybody listening in, make sure you request that from Scott. Um, okay, I want to talk about technology and innovation. You mentioned video before. I'd love your 2 cents on this. So I say at a minimum, like you're conspicuous now if you don't have video on your website. And for me, the minimum requirement is have a section that says what makes us different, and then just have 3 videos that are framed with brevity, specificity, and are proprietary. Okay, so they're brief and to the point. They're not painful, just very, very concise. The specificity is meaningful specifics, not generalities, and proprietary. You can only get this from us. And the 3 videos I like are our people, as you talked about, roles and responsibilities, talent, bench strength, our practice, all around our client experience and who we're suited for, professional contrast, professional scarcity, narrow casting, all of that. So our people, our practice, and then our process, the proprietary, fluid, and dynamic approach that puts every piece of the financial puzzle together. And those 3 videos can generally be 90 seconds long each, more or less, professionally produced. They're evergreen. As you said, they're great for existing clients. They're great for strategic partners. The tip of the spear for prospective clients. That's our approach. Any thoughts or comments?
Well, I think that's a great strategy, and I love everything about that. The only thing I would add is maybe another P, and that's personal. So I think it's really important that people know who you are, not just what you do. And I had a longtime friend of mine and client who had left and moved out of the area, and we hadn't worked together in many years. And he called me and he said, "Okay, you've expanded. Now you're in our market in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm looking at advisors in and around the market, and I pulled up one of your team members. They never mention anything about their personal life, their family, or anything. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to do business with someone that doesn't think it's important to mention who they are and what's important to them. And if that's not important to them, then that's not the kind of person I want to work with. So can you give me 3 or 4 other advisors that I can vet in that market?"
Wow.
And that's a powerful lesson for us to remember, that who you are matters. I go on websites all the time and I pull up the advisor I'm getting ready to talk to that might want to sell their business, and we have an intro appointment, and I'm reviewing, I'm trying to find anything I can about the person, the human. And then I'm going to ask them a question about that on the call, because 90% of our business focuses strictly on the deal, the transaction, the business, not the human. But it's the human that I'm going to do business with. It's the human that I want to understand. It's the human that I'm trying to solve for in anything we're doing. So, other thing on video that I would add is I really think touch matters. So in my practice, it was really important to enhance and increase touch. So this is one of the first things we do when we buy a practice. We want to make sure that we're connecting with clients and helping that advisor maybe get a reach that he didn't have or she didn't have before. And so I love the ability to think of things that matter to your clients and deliver it. And here's why. Couple of reasons. Number one is the high touch benefit. Number two is referability. I'm sorry, but I can go to my son and say, "Son, you should call my advisor. He's great." And my son goes, "Okay, Dad, thanks." And he's not going to do it. But if my advisor sends me videos that happen to pertain to something that might be valuable to my son, I can forward that video to my son. I can share it on social media. Become shareable, become interesting and interested in the next generation. I think research shows, and I don't have the exact research or the exact place, but I've seen multiple articles talk about one of the number one things ultra high net worth clients think about is the next generation and their kids' ability or inability to manage what they've built. If you're helping them solve the greatest fear they have, that they've built all of this for their family, and now the family's gonna ruin it and not utilize it with some legacy thinking. It's a great way. Video is a great way to create the shareability, to be fun, to find out what they want to learn more about, and to create something that's going to build that depth. So, that's the last point is just staying in front of people. I mean, it's just really valuable to be someone that's in the inbox. And you'd be surprised at the amount of time people would prefer to see you. It's a lot more than you think. Oftentimes, they can't tell the difference between whether they met with you in the office or they watched your video. And that's
True.
crazy, but it's true. So, they feel like they see you all the time. And if you think about it, how many times you have Facebook friends, yet you see them in the grocery store and you're like, "Oh, I don't want to talk." People do this. I don't want to talk to that person. But they know everything about that person. They know their family, they know their kids, they know everything because they went to high school 32 years ago together. So I would just say, be that for your clients. Be that person that creates something that can be generational, where they feel like they know you in a way that maybe they didn't before. You have that ability now. You got to just find the right partners.
Well, the beauty of video is it's always on 24/7. And, when a prospective client is introduced to you and they're at home alone with their thoughts and they've done their Google search and things like that, they finally land on your site and they make that connection virtually, builds a level of predisposition and self-motivation to actually want to reach out and connect. Now, I got to think, expanding on the people, practice, and process, that fourth P of personal, I got to think you're a fan now of video testimonials. Now that those parameters are pretty clear, letting a client or a strategic partner tell your story and let people see your value through the lens of social proof, that persuasive impact's powerful. And I've seen some video examples, Scott, that are so compelling. In 60, 90 seconds, having a client explain why they are so incredibly loyal to their financial professional, it's powerful. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, in 2003, I tried to do a commercial. I had an uncle that was doing, it had a production company. He offered to do a great deal for me. He came out and had a professional videographer shoot. I'm talking the cameras like this big, and we do a video, and oh my gosh, it got tore up by compliance. And I remember thinking, oh, it's just so good if we could get what we do out to people. And now we have the ability to do it. I have not done it. Just I have not done it in the practice yet with our team, but I have encouraged our team members to do it. So I'm anxious to see how we execute it, where it goes. I know it's new, and there's a lot of companies that now are doing it, and you have to find the right ones. You don't want to get into any trouble. But the reality is, I love it. I think it's a great way to show and share your story, and nothing's better than somebody else telling someone how great you are. You doing it is not, that's selling, and people don't want to be sold, but marketing is attracting people to you. And if someone is able to share your story on your behalf, that's attracting. It's easy. It's like getting a friend to hook you up with one of their best friends when you're in college. It's like, oh, they're already pre-approved. This is great.
Nice job simplifying it that way. I like it. But the bottom line is, marketing is what you say, branding is what they hear. And that is influenced by what somebody else is saying about you when you're not necessarily in the room. Like the persuasive impact of somebody telling your story is incredibly powerful. So some good insights there. We're kind of bumping up on time. I do want to spend a moment on this. I know you're big in athletics. You're a Ted Lasso fan, as the flag behind you would indicate.
Believe. Yep.
Yeah, that's powerful. I've got another friend that loves that whole storyline as well. That's actually quite powerful. It's not just what people don't want to know, just what you know, and they don't need to know everything you know. They do want to know that you know, but they also want to know what you believe, what you believe in. And I know you have a very nice little acronym that I think is part of your decorum and code of conduct and your view on life. So if you could close out and just walk people through that framework, I'd love to hear that.
Happily. I learned pretty early on, coming into the business in the early 2000s, that I wasn't going to be in business very long if I just focused on wealth. So early on, we established a tagline called Life Wealth Optimization. And what's interesting is the wealth optimization was what we used to scale our process. That was our wealth optimization, was all the systems and processes I talked to you about that really culminated over a number of years. They weren't all built out right away. I wasn't that good. I was actually slow, but I got it done. Life optimization was something that I spent a lot of time on. And I developed a model called the life model. The high performance life model is now what I use. It's also what my podcast is. There's lots of things that I use this for, but this was my model that I would utilize with our clients to optimize their life. And I would ask questions, the same questions I did for myself, because I found myself always out of balance. I was always, wanting to find that balance, but knowing that it was probably not going to happen. So self-awareness is extremely key, but you have to ask yourself the right questions. So on a piece of paper, I would write L at the top left corner. I would draw a T, and I would write L in the top left box, I in the next box, F in the bottom, and then E in the bottom left. And that would be my life model. What that is love, the who's in your life that matter most. Who gives you energy? Who do you want more of? This can be business, professional. Take an evaluation. Who are the people you work for? If you say, I work for my family, this is all I care about, and yet you're always at work and you're not doing anything with your family, you're off, and you've got to figure out how to fix that. Impact, the I. This is what you do beyond your day job. Okay? It's your purpose. It's not just that you have a great career or a great practice. If you did sell your business or retire, what are you doing? And is everything you're doing tied to your practice? That's very dangerous. I found that to be the biggest challenge in our industry, is that so many advisors' entire impact is based on their business. And when they look to exit or they sell, they feel very empty. So this is an area that not just in our industry, but in all places, your clients, you've helped them through this. You know what I mean? So that's your what beyond your day job. Then you have faith, something bigger than yourself. For me, it's God. For you, it could be spiritual, but it's got to be something that puts the why, that puts the ego behind the purpose. You've got to have a why that's bigger than you. If you are the only thing that you're driving towards, always empty, always broken, never enough. Next is energy. This is how we show up to the world. Healthy mind, healthy body, healthy spirit. And if you just think about it this way, those are 4 boxes. My 2 boxes on the bottom make me better at the 2 boxes on the top. So if I am strong in my belief, I have a why that's bigger than myself, and I'm showing up with a healthy mind, healthy body, healthy spirit. I'm sleeping well. I'm devoting a lot to my life in the right areas. I've built the strong foundation for the 2 areas above to make a bigger impact and to be a better who to everyone that matters to me in my life. These all work together. And the last point I'll make is, in every box, if I'm going to inventory, I would simply ask all the same questions. So in the who box, I would say, what do I want to do with these who's? Why do I want to do it? And how am I going to show up? And it helps me to answer the questions. When I go to what, I do the same thing. Who am I going to do it with? Why do I want to do it? And how am I going to show up? And you just take the other questions and build this model. And it's really served me so well. I live it. I've had great success with it. I've helped a lot of people through this. And it's something that we're bringing a lot more out into the forefront. But the secret it's always been my life optimization model, something I've used in my practice for 20 plus years.
Well, and I know you're completely congruent and consistent in how you conduct yourself. I will say something in terms of why that resonates with me. I know somebody, he said something quite profound. He said, we are what we lack. And I thought about that. And, in business, you're thinking about, okay, what's a prospective client's unmet needs? What's missing that they want to address? What do they want from you? And what I found, especially in the last 5 years, is that so much about life has become so synthetic. And not to bog down on that, but I think what you're talking about is the unmet need. What people are lacking is an authentic relationship with somebody who is not just skilled, but they actually care. Their decorum is centered. They're not trying to succeed at the expense of anybody. In fact, monetization is second to impact and fulfillment. And I think that life framework is something, it's just a nice, gentle reminder to make sure that we're on the right path here. So that's rock solid. Okay, I really recommend everybody listening in, follow Scott on LinkedIn. Very, very active there. Can they reach you directly to get the readiness quiz?
Yeah, you could, if you DM me on LinkedIn, that's an easy way for anyone that's following. You can also go to scottdanner.com and find me there. And a lot of the stuff that I put out, I also put out on YouTube. I've spent a lot of time in this industry, focusing on life. Like I think it's all together. It's all congruent with each other. It's all a part of the same thing. So, if you like there's a lot of stuff that can be process oriented, analytical, that could be executable processes that you could take into your practice every day and still love what you're doing and still love your life and still love the people you're doing it with. And that's our goal. So you can find me anywhere. Apparently you could even find me, we're going to bring it back around on Chat GPT or any of our places. I'm grateful that I came up on there. So thank you for searching and thank you for helping.
And it's a great picture. When I went on ChatGPT and I said, "Who is this Scott Danner guy?" That's the picture that showed up.
Nice.
Very nice overview, background, career highlights, what you focus on today, why this might be relevant to you, and potential conversation questions, due diligence. It's incredibly thorough. And as you know, I mean, this is an approach that an advisor can take with a prospective client. Is after you've done this deep dive, you can then say, where does Scott's interests align with mine? And where's the fit? It's actually quite compelling how it will actually put that together. So yeah, next frontier technology is incredible, but don't forget the unmet need for a lot of people is, am I surrounded by good people? Am I in a great environment that's going to help me flourish and become who I want to become? It's good stuff. So Scott, great job. Really appreciate it. And again, Scott's podcast is exceptional. Any closing comments?
No, just grateful to be a part of it, Duncan. Thanks for sharing this with your audience and thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit ParetoSystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.